wrong direction. All the polls would suggest that, and your experience would suggest that. Sometimes in Iowa, I think we're insulated from what may happen on the coasts or in the big economy cities. But you know what? This is affecting everyone. And it's affecting you, and most importantly, it's affecting the future of our children. I look at the faces of my 3 children, 13, 10, and 7, and I don't know if I can tell them honestly that tomorrow, or when they're adults, that they're going to have a better country than I had when I was growing up just south of here in Ankeny. And so we need a different leader. We need somebody that doesn't just talk, that gets stuff done, and has proven that they can get stuff done in difficult times. And that's why I signed on with Tim Pawlenty. And I want him to be the next President of the United States. And you're going to get to hear from him, and you're going to get to ask him questions, you're going to get to look him in the eye, and judge him, and size him up, and I'll tell you, you're going to conclude what I found. He may be an over-the-hill hockey player, but he's going to be a heck of a president, I'll tell you that. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce my friend, Senator Jerry Bain, who's going to do the formal introduction. But in my heart, Tim Pawlenty's the right guy at the right time, and we need everyone in this room to help, and we need your help as soon as this Saturday at the straw poll. So Jerry, go ahead and formally introduce the governor.
Wow, the crowd, right?
Yeah.
Well, it was kind of interesting. I got an email that asked me to say a few words, and I thought it was kind of gutsy to have a politician say a few words without parameters on what I had to say. But I'm really excited we've got a crowd like this. This is a great turnout. It's middle of the afternoon. You're taking a hot summer day to come here, and I'm really impressed. I'm glad you're here. I think we have a couple of great opportunities going on right now. First off, we have a great slate of GOP candidates. The biggest problem we have to decide is which one is the best of the best. And I think we got a real treat today because I think we genuinely have the best of the best here with us this afternoon. And you're going to get a chance to chat with him, hear from him, and see why I think he's the best man to take us into the next century. And I would really like a hearty Boone, Iowa welcome for Governor Tim Pawlenty.
I want you all to see if you don't sign up for our campaign. Jerry was originally a little reluctant and a little hesitant. And,
now I'm on.
Then I talk to him.
Well, first of all, Senator Chip, these are 2 legislators who work really hard for this part of Iowa and for Iowa more broadly. It's not a glamorous job. I used to be the majority leader of the Minnesota House. And look, no matter what you do, you get some people mad at you, and you got to give up part of your other life to serve. I think it's important that we have quality people with good integrity and the right compass settings to serve on school boards and county commissions and in the state legislature. And so let's give these 2 fine legislators a round of applause and appreciation. You're welcome. Now, my wife Mary's going to be back tomorrow on the campaign trail with me in Iowa. I'm looking forward to having her as we go towards the Ames straw poll. So if you haven't met her yet, I hope you'll have a chance to do so. She plays a big part in my life and a big part of the campaign, and she's a real delight and a truth teller. I was first thinking about running for governor some years ago, back in 2001. I'd been the majority leader of the Minnesota House, and I came home and I said, well, honey, look, you know, we fought the big battles here. We've made some good progress, but probably time to turn the page and move on to the next chapter in life. So I'm not running for governor. And she literally came across the floor and grabbed me by the lapels. And she said, you got to do it. I mean, there is no one else to do it in Minnesota. Everything we work for, everything that we believed in will get washed away if you don't run. And I thought, wow, I'm Rocky Balboa. And this is Adrian. And so I was inspired in part by that and got into the race, and through a lot of uphill odds, went on to win the governorship of Minnesota as a conservative in a very blue state. But about a month into my governorship, there was a lot going on. There was an inaugural, there was a State of the State address, a budget address, and all the things that go with that. And of course, we had a big budget deficit initially to deal with, so the job was very demanding from a schedule standpoint. And Mary was holding to me account for my schedule. She was saying, look, you know, you're not just governor, you got to be dad, and you got to be a husband, and so you get your schedule back in balance. And we had a little, tense discussion about that. And I said, well, honey, I mean, don't you remember? I mean, you're the one who gave me that inspiring speech in the living room to do this? And there was a pause. And she said, yeah, I remember, but I never thought you'd win. So that's the kind of good advice you get from spouses. I'm glad you're here on this weekday afternoon, and I hope you have a chance to meet Mary. But I want to share with you a few thoughts about, on a more serious note, about the challenges facing our country. You know, we got the message the other day, last week, that one of the independent rating agencies had downgraded the United States of America. And of course, that's just one of many symptoms of an ailing country. And if you have a fever and you're running a temperature, and you're running it for a day or so, maybe you just take it easy and hope it passes. But if you're running it for weeks or months on end, pretty soon you can't just treat the fever, you can't just throw aspirin at it. You got to find out what's causing it, what's the underlying problem. And so whether it's the debt rating downgrade, or whether it's all the other warning lights that we see on the dashboard of the United States of America, you know that our country's in trouble. And you know what they just did in Washington, D.C. didn't really fix it. And you know we've got to have a new and better direction for America. And you know in order to do that, we're going to have a new and better president. And so I'm running for President of the United States of America because I believe I've got the skills and the strength and the experience and the record of results and the values and the conviction to lead this country to a better place, and I will. Before I talk to you about that vision, though, I want to talk to you about how we got into this mess and some lessons we can learn as we go forward. One of the lessons that we can learn as we go forward is this. Before we next put somebody in the Oval Office and make him or her President of the United States and Commander-in-Chief and leader of the free world, they better be ready for the job. Barack Obama came to Iowa and convinced the Democrats here that it would be a good idea to catapult him to the presidency of the United States. And what we now know, a few years removed from that, is he wasn't ready. You know, he had been a community organizer, he had been a college professor, he had been in the United States Senate long enough to have a cup of coffee before it got cold, and then we made him President of the United States. And we wonder why it didn't work. These are some of the most historically challenging times our nation has ever faced. And we need seasoned, tested leaders with results. Now, the other thing is we learned, don't get duped by rhetoric. You know, he came through town like an elixir salesman and was selling the elixir. Man, the words sounded great, the speeches were soaring, the rhetoric was incredible. Some of you maybe even have admired at least the rhetoric, if not the content. And what do we learn from that? Well, the rhetoric, if it's not backed up by results, doesn't mean much, does it? Barack Obama's rhetoric doesn't put gasoline in your car. Barack Obama's rhetoric doesn't pay your mortgage. Barack Obama's rhetoric doesn't pay your health insurance premiums. Barack Obama's rhetoric doesn't pay for your kids' college. And so you can't live or eat on his rhetoric. We've got to have more than more political rhetoric. We have to have results to get this country moving again. And then lastly, if we're going to have America's promise restored, we have to have a president who keeps his or her promise to America. The President Obama made a lot of big promises to the country, and he's broken or unfulfilled just about every one of them. Now, I won't go through them all because we'd be here a long time. We'd be here past supper. But let me give you a few examples. He got elected President of the United States in March of 2009, several months after he was already president. He said, I will cut the deficit in half, the budget deficit in half, during my first term. Now, this is at a time when he already knew about the economic downfall, so you can't say that was a surprise. When George Bush left office, the budget deficit for that year, 1 year, was about $500 billion. Barack Obama didn't cut it in half. He tripled it. It's about $1.5 trillion today. I'm sorry, Mr. President, but you broke your promise. Then he said in Iowa when he was campaigning, you know, we do need to fix the health care system, but remember back then he was opposed as a candidate to the individual mandate. He said, I'll do it the right way, I'll do it with Republicans. He said, I'll focus on cost containment to make it more affordable. And then he went to Washington, D.C. and did the exact opposite. He broke every one of those promises again. Now I'll give you one more, you know, like I said, the list is long. He said, we got an economic problem. Yeah, of course we do. And he offered up as the main solution from his perspective the stimulus bill. Remember that one? What a skunk that is, huh? So we got the stimulus bill. And he said, you know, if you don't pass the stimulus bill, unemployment could go as high as 8%. Well, they passed that big old porker, and guess what? Unemployment didn't go to 8%, it went to 10%. Well, you get the idea. Now, in my view, you can stick a fork in Barack Obama because politically he's done. You look at his numbers nationally, they're not very good. You look at his numbers in the swing states, they're awful. So the main way we're going to goof this up is to not have the best Republican candidate get nominated and go forward and carry the cause to get this country back on track. So I want to encourage you as Iowans to think not just about being first, but about being right in your decision making, starting with the Ames straw poll this weekend. Now here's what I can bring to the table amongst other things. One is we got to get this economy moving again, and we got to have a specific concrete plan that will lead to results and the conviction and the strength to deliver it. So I've got the most specific, most concrete, boldest, most aggressive economic plan of any candidate in this race, including the president. By the way, you can't find him on the issues of the day in any specific detail in public. You know, for example, you know and I know we have to reform spending, including in areas in Social Security for the future generation and Medicare and Medicaid. I've been offering a prize around the state. I'll offer it here. If you can find Barack Obama's specific proposal to reform any one of those programs that he's made in public, I will make you dinner at your house. I will come to your house and make you a dinner, my menu choice. Or if you prefer, I will mow your lawn. Limited to 1 acre, because I know I've been to his house. Unless you let me use your tractor. But the reason I know I won't have to do either of those things is because he doesn't have a plan. I do. Here it is. It's all on the website in detail, but here's the Reader's Digest version. Cut the business tax rate from 35% down to 15%. But then also clean out as many of the exemptions, deductions, credits, and loopholes as possible so we have a flatter, simpler, lighter tax burden on our businesses and job providers, but then make them compete on their ability to go out in a market and connect to customers, not their ability to go to Congress and get a lobbyist and pay off or buy off their member of Congress. The way they do this now is they say, well, gosh, if you got the right lobbyist or the right connections, you get a special exemption, you get a special deduction, you get a special credit, you get a special loophole. Let's have a level, flat, lower, lighter playing field for everybody and eliminate as many of those deductions to make the tax rate from one of the worst in the world to one of the best. And then shrink those individual tax rates from 6 down to 2. Simplify that tax system. And by the way, I think one of the best ways we could have tax reform in this country is to require, under penalty of perjury, every member of Congress to do his or her own tax returns without the help of a lawyer, tax accountant, or preparer. Let them experience each year the mindless, intimidating, confusing, ridiculous, expensive, awful thing that is our 9,000-page tax code. I filled out a W-4 form not long ago. It's a half a page. Your name, address, social security number. It came with 3 pages or so of instructions. I mean, really? Let these guys, and men and women, do their own taxes every year, and then if they can't do it, then we'll give them a hardship waiver. But you give them 2 or 3 years of that, they'll be begging for tax reform. But back to the point, we also have to eliminate taxation on dividends and interest and capital gains. We have to do the real work of cutting spending. We have to have an American energy policy instead of a Middle Eastern energy policy. We have to really fix health care, not through government, but through markets like I did in Minnesota. We also have to take on the big issues of getting public employee compensation reform back in line with what it should be with the private sector and more. Look, I want to get to your questions, but I'll just close by telling you this. If there were another candidate here who's running for the Republican nomination, whoever it was, most of the candidates are going to say most of the same things. Any bobblehead can stand up here and spout off the Republican talking points. That's not hard. I mean, I could teach him to do it in 5 minutes. Maybe
I think I'm offended, I'm not sure.
That's not the hard part. I mean, my goodness, anybody can do that. But I hope as you think about it, because you're going to listen to those presentations and you're going to say, well, gosh, they all sound the same. You know, what difference does it make? They're all going to say, you know, I'm for cutting spending, I'm for cutting taxes, I'm for pro-job investment strategies, I'm pro-life, I'm traditional marriage, I'm for appointing conservative justices, I'm for cracking down on illegal immigration, I'm for welfare reform, and down the list. So you might say, well, what's the difference? Well, one additional question I hope you ask is, did you actually do all that stuff? Because I've had enough of the rhetoric, I've had enough of the speeches. The country doesn't need any more broken promises or fancy speeches or ridiculous rhetoric. We had that with President Obama. What we need now is the results to get this country back on track. So if you look at my record in Minnesota, the proof is in the pudding. We took spending from historic highs to historic lows. We cut taxes net $800 million or so over 8 years, even though we had the effects of 2 recessions during that time. I did school reform and took on the public employee teacher unions and moved teachers from seniority pay to performance pay, one of the first states in the nation to offer it statewide. We had one of the longest transit strikes in the country, so we get our bus drivers' benefits back in line with the private sector. I appointed the first group of conservative majority justices to our Supreme Court in the modern history of the state. We did healthcare reform the right way. No individual mandates, no takeovers. I dramatically moved the needle forward for the pro-life cause in my state. I was the co-author of the bill to defend marriage and define it as between a man and a woman. We were one of the leaders on immigration reform, cracking down on illegal immigration, and on down the list. The point is, there's a big difference between talking and doing. I did it in Minnesota. And lastly, people say, well, I'm the one who can go get those votes in those swing states because we know how most states are going to go, or many of them are going to go. But the election, as you know, comes down to that last 6 or so states that decided. Iowa's one of them. Maybe Minnesota will be one of them. Wisconsin will be one. Ohio will be one. Pennsylvania may be one, and a few others. But in those states, people are going to say, I'm the one who can win as a conservative. Well, I actually did it. I got elected and re-elected, not in an easy place for a Republican, but in one of the most hostile, difficult environments for a conservative in the country. Some of you are old enough to remember Eugene McCarthy, or Walter Mondale, or Hubert Humphrey, or Paul Wellstone, or Jesse Ventura, or now United States Senator Al Franken. If I can do it in Minnesota, we can do it anywhere. I'm not going to Washington, D.C. just to change Washington, D.C. I'm going to Washington, D.C. as president to defeat it. It's become a monstrosity. And now I don't want to have hope and change be like the president just came out yesterday and gave this speech about the economy. While he spoke, the stock market went down another 200 points. I mean, inspiring as that was. But if you listen to his speech, hope and change has become hope and blame. Hope and blame. And so we're going to move forward in a positive, can-do attitude, not based on rhetoric, but based on results. So I hope you'll join our cause. The same straw poll's coming up on Saturday. Yeah, many of you have probably been there before, but if you haven't, it's a fun event. Voting's from 10 to 4. Our campaign can get you free tickets. We'll get you there if you need help with transportation. There's bands, there's food. We got Famous Days barbecue, Dairy Queen blizzards. The weather's supposed to be nice. It's going to be fantastic. So I hope you can come. You don't have to come for the whole day. You can come for a little while and get back to your other things. But I hope you'll come to the straw poll. It's an important benchmark for our campaign. It's an important benchmark for Iowa. And we feel really good about the momentum we have on the ground. But I can't do this alone. I need lots of friends and lots of supporters. So if you haven't signed up, please do on your way out. And we'll make sure we get you all the information. I look forward to your questions. Thank you very much for listening.